world today. He spent $50 million buying old phones. People laughed at him, saying he was crazy, but that foolish act now earns him $80 million every year. Every morning, a large number of phones arrive at his factory. They are full of cracks, dust, and broken casings. In most people's eyes, it's worthless junk, but in his eyes, it is a treasure more valuable than oil. First, the phones are ripped apart, with the batteries, screens, and casings piled up to the side. The real treasure is on the motherboard, the tiny chips plated with 24-karat gold. First, add de-golding powder to a basin, then pour in hot water and place the motherboard in the de-golding solution to wash. The yellow spots on the motherboard turn silver, and the gold washes out. Don't underestimate a thin motherboard. About 50 phones can yield 1 to 2 grams of gold, and more than 1 billion phones are discarded every year worldwide. To outsiders, it's all useless electronic waste. To him, the continuous flow of gold turns the trash into stable wealth.
So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I wish to welcome you to yet another in the series of Humanist TV, where we focus on consumers, and consumers are us, are all of us, whether we are in the executive, legislature, judiciary, whether we are in the regulatory sector, where we're in business, civil society, we're religious, cultural leaders, whether we're in the media, we are all consumers. And as consumers, we do consume goods and services, and these keep on evolving. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you yet into another series of our Humanist TV, focusing on empowering consumers so that we have got a sustainable, a global world, sustainable environment, sustainable economies, where we have got consumers and businesses that are doing responsible consumption and production. Once again, before we kick off, I would like to thank the Humanist TV management always partnering with us to sensitize consumers. Colleagues, this is our other series as regards to e-waste, and the last week we looked at e-waste, consumers' responsibility, consumers' rights and responsibilities. Today we would love to look at e-waste in the digital era, stroke the digital economy. The role of stakeholders. What do we need to do, each one of us, in this dispensation? What do we need to do with regards to the infrastructure that is running the digital economy? What are those aspects? What are those infrastructure, gadgets, tools that we are using in the digital era and that are facilitating the digital economy? How do we use them? What is involved in the digital economy? What is involved in effecting it and having it roll effectively to benefit us, the consumers, as we are the majority? We are the foundation of any production, any service development. Once we consume it, we facilitate its growth. What is our role? Then what is the role of those that innovate, generate, do research, empower us? What is the role that those who put, making sure that the quality of the goods and services in the digital era and the economy we get our money worth? What is their role, and what is the role of those who do policy, the duty bearers? So today, we would love to dig deep into that, having gone through what is there for the consumers. We would appreciate last weekend or last Friday, and the first in the series with regards to the E-West, we looked at the different aspects with regards to the rights of consumers. We will appreciate that the digital era is with us, as we have watched in those movies. The two short clips of videos have shown us the evolution of the computer, which is part of the infrastructure of the digital era and stroke economy, and also which is the facilitator. You'll find that all of you who look at these issues differently, the Internet of Things plays a role in every aspect of humanity today. And all this is no longer a privilege, but it is a right. It is a common good that we need in our day-to-day life. Like we breathe, you'll find that whether you have got the gadget or not, you are a beneficiary of the digital era, because many aspects in the digital economy come to you, you access them because you are either being provided for or you are the provider. Whoever you're providing, whether they are in urban, peri-urban, or rural, they benefit from these services. So it is very key and important that today we brace ourselves with understanding the digital era we are in and how the economy is currently being driven by the digital infrastructure, digital gadgets, digital goods, digital appliances, and digital services. You'll find that when we wake up, the first thing that we will need is clean air. In case the air is not cleaned, there would be an equipment that will either condition it or clean it. But you need energy, and you'll find that that energy has to be paid for. You need digital finance. You need water. You need digital finance to pay for that water. You will, in case you're ordering it online, you'll need digital finance. That is all e-commerce. That is all the digital era, the digital economy. You'll need a gadget. Let's say you are preparing. We used to have those manual gadgets, but today we are using the digital microwaves, digital pressure cookers. We are using digital refrigerators. We are using digital appliances that collect our data, that collect information on us, that get to know what you use them to cook, and maybe somewhere that data is being kept. So as a consumer, we looked at your rights, or our rights and responsibilities last week, last Friday, in this digital era, understanding that the E-West is mainly generated by us. To date, the gap between the digital divide is continuously reducing. But when we look at the magnitude of the appliances, the gadgets, we will find that even those that are deep in a rural area with any access to an appliance that they use to put in the USSD code and get money, it is an appliance that once it reaches the end of its life cycle, it becomes an E-West. Whether you are in an urban area, whether you are digitally literate or illiterate, you are already in the digital era, you are in the digital economy already practicing. You might have limited digital literacy and financial literacy, but once you get any tool, any gadget, if you are connected to a SIM card, you are connected to a phone, you are already transacting in the digital era and digital economy, because you need airtime, you receive money, you make calls, you buy voice bundles. And to date, even those small non-smartphones, I'm told that they also get WhatsApp. You listen, your phone is your radio. You listen to digital FM stations, not the analog ones. So every human being, every living creature on the planet is already in the digital era and the digital economy. One might say the ships that are affect the oceans in one way or another during transportation and so forth, they are digitally directed. The GPS systems that direct them from port to port and their routes. So every aspect of humanity, the impact of climate change is all now determined and also informs us. All that is informed digitally. But all of these processes, practices, explorations, they are informed by digital infrastructure. The digital infrastructure, once it reaches the end of its life cycle, it becomes e-West, electronic West. And we need to play a role as beneficiaries of all these advancements, the revolution that are coming on with the digital era. The e-West has come in, the e-products are in. We need to act. We have responsibilities in our respective circles. So as consumers, last week, we looked at our rights. We have got the right to basic needs, but majority of these basic needs now, we use our gadgets to access them, to order them, to pay for them. And they themselves as services also end up being e-West. As you access the adequate food, you end up using different gadgets to prepare it, to access it, and in a way also it affects us. We order clothes online, we pay for shelter, we pay our hotels, we pay everything using electronic gadgets. We go for medical services, we get education using tablets, using flat screens, using different tablets, and using the electronic infrastructure. That towers are in our homes, in our neighborhoods. But once they reach the end of their life cycle, they need to be disposed of. And this is where we need to start discussing, and we get to know how they positively and negatively impact us, how we positively behave and avert behaving negatively, which is irresponsible. So in all the rights that we looked at, the right to basic needs with regards to e-West, with regards to electronic appliances, they do help us access, but we need to be safe with them. As we access them, we have a right to safety. They have to be of good quality and so forth. Further, as we access them, we must make the choices, but the choices must be right with the right information. And as we get that right information, we need to make right decisions. And after we have made the right decisions with the correct information, in case they are not meeting our needs, we need to have leaders. And some of this leaders needs consumer representation. With consumer representation, to be effective, we need consumer education. With effective consumer education, with the leaders, we need to be in a healthy environment. The right to a healthy environment can be impeded by e-waste. It is our right. As we educate you, it is your right to be educated, to get the correct electronic gadget, for you to be parts and parcel of the digital era and be part of the digital economy, to access the needs that you need as a consumer. But it will be your responsibility to uphold a healthy environment. These are issues that we looked at. But as we are leading you through these same rights and responsibilities are going to reflect as we look at the other responsible stakeholders in the digital era and economy. What is the other stakeholders' role? As a consumer, you have to be critically aware as you meet your needs, as using the digital equipment, the electronic gadget. You make your choice, you need to be critical. You make a decision, but once you make a decision and you find that whatever appliance, electronic appliance you have acquired is not of value, was done through whitewash or misinformation and disinformation, you need to take action as your responsibility. Then be socially concerned, because it might not only affect you, it can affect also others and the community and colleagues. Electronic waste is not only in appliances in our homes, in factories, in what? Even mobility, the modern vehicles, even those that are old, have got an impact on the environment. So the e-waste is in every aspect of our life. Health, electronic, vehicles, every aspect we use. So as we are having social concern, we need also to be environmentally aware. How do we dispose them of? How do we need solidarity to make sure that in the digital era, as we enjoy the digital economy, we need to bring in aspects of circularity. How do we have a circular economy? We have zero waste, where e-waste falls. We need to work in solidarity, and today that's why we are looking at the role of the different stakeholders. Now, the role of the different stakeholders, I would love to lead you through. Then I would call in my colleague Bernard, who has joined us. As I lead you through the role of the different stakeholders, I would like us to go through each one of them. But I would love to say that all that we are saying needs us to be part of the people. We cannot realize effective, good practice without people. Without people, all that we are campaigning for, to have inclusive digital economy, to have an inclusive digital era, which is sustainable, which is transforming the livelihoods, the quality of life, cannot be successful and effective without consumers the people. This is the message and call to action to the duty bearers, to the executive, legislature, judiciary, regulators, that people, consumers, are the foundation and the key to the success of any campaign for responsible and successful digital economy and era. Knowledgeable consumers will be in position to do responsible consumption and drive responsible production. Consumers will speak out and tell that the products that are being sold to us on the market, the services that are being sold to us are not effective. They do not give us value for our money. Then the duty bearers, like the ministries, departments, and agencies, will have to put in place policies to guide the uptake of the digital economy, the utilization of the digital economy products, services. Then ministries and departments, agencies have to put regulations. I'll use the example of Uganda and commend one of the areas of the authorities, like the Uganda Communications Commission, putting in place the e-West strategies, the collection, the administration, the awareness that these need to go to the last mile. And what is the last mile? These are the consumers. With the Uganda Communications Commission's approach and strategy under the Ministry of Information, Communication Technologies and National Guidance, the Ministries of Environment, agencies of environmental management, local government, schools, and so forth need to get on board, because majority of people are in the local government. They are in institutions of learning. They are in cities, municipalities, town councils. We need to take this voice down for them to play their role. If I would use the report of the Uganda Communications Commission, to date, over 45 million subscribers are on mobile phones. And these are gadgets subscribed to. They use these gadgets to do all businesses in, and this brings out inclusivity and also accessibility to the different the digital gadgets, electronic gadgets. Looking at people who actively are using the electronic gadgets in a period of, let's say, 90 days, there are over 37 million people who have used their phones and so forth. You'll find that on a daily basis, the numbers increase. You'll find that some of those that are registered, let's say, to having SIM cards, others have got 2 SIM cards, but the activity and so forth, like in the video we saw earlier, the small phones, whether they are in rural or urban areas, they are connected to the digital era. They're using the electronic infrastructure to communicate, to transact. But once those gadgets get out of service, they are disposed of. Now, the way they are disposed of is very key. So this is where the different strategies that are put in place are helping a lot to make sure that at each level, in particular starting with the local government, households, how do we get these out of service gadgets, collect them, take them, let's say, to a parish level or a sub-county level where they can be accessed, taken in, and processed by responsible businesses. So the role of ministries, departments, and agencies is to the developing of policies, developing of laws, and then regulations that need to be implemented to collect this stuff from the consumers. Businesses need to play the same role through their industrial associations, through their business associations, to come in and make sure they join, like the arrangement put out by UCC, making sure there are more collection centers in communities, collection centers in local government areas, in schools, and then coming up to the national level doing the assessment. Where are those aggregators who are going to take these aspects into the community, into recycling, repurposing, and also reuse? The other aspects that we need to bring in are civil society, religious leaders, cultural leaders. They need also to be sensitized to go in and also use their platforms on a daily basis and make sure that the message of the e-West is pushed down, and also sensitizing the consumers, their congregations, on aspects of making sure that the digital era, the digital economy is grounded, is simplified to the local communities in rural, peri-urban, and urban areas. They get to understand how to access all this and use it effectively. Institutions of learning. These are institutions that hold the biggest amount of, the biggest number of our population. Let's look at students in universities, tertiary institutions. We go to secondary schools, primary schools. Nearly 50% of our population is in those institutions. And you'll find that 50% of our generation, the youth, the young, are all in education institutions, and they need to get to understand the positives and the negatives of e-West. Once it is well collected, managed, it can be an incentive for them to also innovate. The academia, research institutions will need to innovate, to do more research on how we can use the e-West locally and also manage it effectively. Then we need to build their capacities on how to collect all this and manage it. We need to sensitize them. We need to communicate up to the last consumer who owns a radio, who owns a phone. Anything that has got a motherboard needs to be informed about how it affects and how it becomes a waste. So e-West needs to be localized and taken down to the people. The other sector that really plays a role, like I said, the civil society plays a role, the cultural leaders, the religious leaders play a role, and they need to play their advocacy role for awareness purposes, to inform policy, to inform other players that there is a challenge if we do not handle the benefits and the demerits of the digital era or the digital economy. The demerits are mainly e-West, if not handled properly. So that is very key, where that every pillar of society, every pillar of the country is brought into the mix. The civil society play a major role. They reach out, but there is another sector, the media. The media are the ears, the mouth, and the voice or the eyes of society in a number of aspects. You'll find in any country, they are called the fourth estate, after the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and then the fourth estate, the media. The media plays a major role in any campaign, in any advocacy, in any awareness. As we roll out the aspects of e-West in our respective countries, we needed to bring in the media, the journalists. In today's world and in our community, I find that the journalists play a major role in many aspects. After playing their role on radio, television, like in Uganda today, we have more than 264 FM stations that are on the digital spectrum. These 264 FM stations plus televisions, like pay TVs, when you look at them, they have got more than 1.6 subscribers, over 264 FM radio stations that are licensed by UCC. And we have got 62 local television stations. All these have got journalists with them. And if we involve them, engage them, these will take down the subject that we are handling as today, the digital era and the economy in it. What is their role? These will play a major role, because they do not only play a role on radio, television, they play a role on the social media. But which is another aspect they play? On a day-to-day in our communities, we have got social cultural engagement, where they play the SME role, MCs, where they manage the functions. With the message put to them, they can easily roll out the message of sensitizing the communities, the consumers in rural, peri-urban areas on the positive of the digital era, the digital economy, its inclusivity, its potential, its benefits to the consumers and the economy, but also inform how best we need to manage the e-West. So, colleagues, the respective stakeholders would need to be sensitized on their role. Even the duty bearers need to be sensitized on the e-West. Ministries, departments, and agencies as duty bearers needed to be sensitized on their role in the digital era, in an inclusive digital economy, and how to handle the vagaries of e-waste, the positives and negatives, how it impacts on the environment, how it impacts on human health, how it impacts on every aspect of humanity if wrongly managed. So all that said, as I will be ushering in my colleague shortly, all these stakeholders in the digital space need to play a major role. Those that are in the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and regulators need to call on to plan for investment in research, investment in innovations in the digital era to facilitate the different value chains in the digital economy, how to get the end-of-life electronic waste, to use it effectively, to repurpose it. They will need to play the role as ministries, departments, and agencies in how best to build the capacities of the different stakeholders, and in particular the consumers, on utilizing the infrastructure put in to collect the e-waste and use it effectively. They will need to invest in awareness, and communicate effectively to each stakeholder. Further, they would need to have an ear on the ground when people do make calls to action as regards to advocacy. They listen into the advice and incorporate it in policy for effective governance of e-waste and the scaling up of the digital economy in this digital era. The rest of us as stakeholders, after ministries, departments, and agencies, we needed to play a major role of opening up to the positive research and innovations, opening up to the capacity building, opening up to the communications and awareness that comes to us. And when we are informed and we learn, we need to advocate. We need to speak up and out to make sure that the benefits of the digital era, the economy, do not come demerits to our health, our environment, and future. We need to play our role, knowing our rights and our responsibilities, calling upon governments, the duty bearers, the private sector will need to play a role in innovation, research, how best do we collect, reuse, repurpose, and sustainably dispose of the e-waste. The private sector will need to engage in capacity building, will need to engage in awareness and communication, and also listen to the voices when we are advocating and calling to action to make sure that the benefits of the digital era and the economy do not affect us as e-waste in our day-to-day life. So with that, colleagues, I would like to call in my colleague Bernard to take on the floor and also share his perspective with regards to issues that require consumer action and so forth. Bernard, you're most welcome, and please take on the floor and share with us your perspectives. Bernard, you're most welcome.
Okay, thank you, Henry, for taking us through. My lighting seems to be a little bit tricky, I don't know whether this lighting is okay, but somehow I think it is a little bit dark here. I don't know whether you're able to see my screen, but yeah. So, ladies and
Yeah, we
gentlemen,
can see you, though it is a little darkish.
yeah, 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 yeah,
We are
sure.
missing that smile of Bernard.
Oh, yeah. So I
Now
may
we
end up.
can see it. Please
Uh,
go ahead, Bernard. The
cool.
floor is
So,
yours.
thank you so much, Henry, and I am very certain that you have now shared everything that we were supposed to share on this show. And I think that our consumers out there have understood the roles of the different actors. I am very happy that you have given us a wide spectrum of all actors. Now, I didn't want to repeat what you've said, but then somehow it is it kind of matches with what I wanted to share a little bit. The context seems to be the same. So, coming from some bit of academia, I always prefer resharing a few concepts with colleagues so that we are matching with the same at the same level. For instance, we need to remind ourselves of the topic of interest that we are talking about. When we are talking about e-waste, I want to remind us that we are talking about the different technological devices that we are using currently and how we are discarding them off or how we are throwing them away. So we're talking about so many things. We're talking about electric appliances. We're talking about electronic devices. We're talking about things like phones, computers, televisions, radios, fridges, etc. All those are. I have to remind you that they form part of the e-waste if they are discarded or if they are thrown away. And also, I have to remind you that globally, over 60 million tons of e-waste is generated almost annually. So you can imagine 60 million metric tons and above of electronic waste. So just imagine millions of waste in terms of tons that we throw away every single day. We need to keep that at the back of our minds when we are diving into the subject matter of who is responsible for what. But also, if you look at the African context, I have to remind all of us that in Africa, many times we are actually importing second-hand devices. So, what is the rationale or what is the impact of the second-hand gadgets to our environment, our society, to the consumer protection? So, we need to think about it as we're talking about the stakeholders that are actually playing part. We need to think about the nature of the second-hand gadgets that are usually imported to the African states, and also we need to reflect on the problem at hand. What is the problem at hand? That every time we are discarding electronic waste, there are two things involved. Number one is the toxicity of the components of these gadgets. Take an example. Most of these gadgets, of course, will have lead, will have mercury, will have cadmium, will have plastics. All of these can be actually toxic to the environment. So we need to be every time we are discussing this subject, these are things that need to keep running in our minds so that we are tailoring our messaging to these realities. And of course, you know that lead, for instance, mercury, cadmium, these are heavy metals that sometimes now they will end in our water bodies, so they can cause water pollution. They end up in our air, especially when they are burnt. You see that people are burning a lot of electronic waste. So when you're burning them, they of course emitting a lot of gases to the environment. But also when they are discarded wrongly, you find them going deeply into our soils, which soils are actually feeding us at the end of the day. This is where we're planting our food, and so these are supposed to be at the back of our minds every time we are discussing topics like the e-waste management. But also, on the other hand, we note that actually this waste can bring opportunities. For instance, if they are well recycled, if they are well, managed, it means we can also have the valuables within this electronic waste. For instance, most of these gadgets can be made of gold. So if you handle them well, it means that you can have access to gold, you can have access to copper, you can have access to rare earth. They call it earth metal. All of those are precious metals that actually you can still use in making other things. So the electronic waste can actually also give us opportunities. In fact, if they are recycled, if they are handled very well, we can still have opportunities derived from them. And so there is potential of green economy if well managed. So these are things also now we need to rethink. How do we make the opportunities available from the electronic waste? So this is like a background to what we are discussing today. So you realize that there's a value chain of electronic waste. So when you go to electronics, there is a level of pre-production. There is a level of production of these materials. There's also a level of post-production, issues of transportation and whatever, storage management, and then also there is another segment of managing the waste that comes out. So it's a whole value chain. So at every step, you realize that there should be an actor. There should be somebody who's doing something. Now that is what we are discussing today. And Henry was very detailed when he went into discussing the different persons. If, for instance, I want to use the same narratives that he gave, but giving a little bit of different context. Talk about the government itself. Now, you realize that governments have a lot of interest. They're supposed to have a lot of interest when it comes to generation of the e-waste. So, for instance, where are the laws and the policies that are actually talking about electronic waste management? Where are the laws or policies that are talking about importation or exportation of electronics to countries? I mean, how do we handle waste? Do we have a law like that? Do we have regulations? Do we have guidelines in different countries, especially on the African continent? That is the mandate of government. It could be the parliament, it could be, the policy makers. Where are the policies? And if at all they're in place, how are they being executed? Do we have them reflected in our national development plans? Do we have them reflected in our regional action plans? Do we have e-waste manifesting in the global, in the national, in the regional frameworks? So that is the role of government. Because if we do not have the regulations, if we don't have the laws, if we don't have the policies, you are giving leeway to industry to actually do whatever they want to do. And at the end of the day, you spend a lot of money in managing waste. You spend a lot of money dealing with the environmental issues. You have to spend a lot of money as governments in responding to the health concerns of the citizens. And sometimes you do not have this money. So you see that you can use policy frameworks to actually avoid all these exorbitant costs that the government sometimes they don't have. And at the end of the day, government ends up having huge burden of disease and so huge burden of loans. And so the economy is compromised. So we need to reflect like that when it comes to the actor of government. But also, government is supposed to set up infrastructure. So, for instance, the formal collection centers of this e-waste, where are they? Where can we see them? So it is not mandate of individuals. It's actually mandate of government to identify areas where the e-waste can be collected or where it can be recycled or where it can. So it is infrastructure. What the government can actually do now is to set up infrastructure modalities where e-waste can be collected, where it can be recycled, or where it can be transformed into other relevant or necessary items. So the issue of infrastructure is very, very key from our government, but also the issue of incentives. We have private sector that would pick interest in recycling e-waste, but they may need to have incentives, especially tax incentives, to enable them actively transform e-waste into necessary materials. Maybe they need some bit of tax breaks or maybe some bit of investment kind of action planning to enable them plan and recycle this kind of e-waste. So incentives to private sector that can do this is still role of government. Government can be able to do that in terms of tax exemptions or whatever incentive the government is able to provide. But also government can do what we call border point control, controlling the importation or exportation of e-waste, that is one, or even electronics that are not suitable for being in countries. So, for instance, why would you allow to have e-waste coming to your country? Or why would you allow electronic gadgets which are not fitting the standards to actually come within your jurisdiction? So we need a lot of regulatory kind of action to regulate the illegal dumping of e-waste in the different countries. Well, the other thing that I need to share is about the manufacturers manufacturers are also another interesting actor. They are the ones producing these electronics. But the question is that can we have something called the extended producer responsibility? What is the responsibility of the person producing the gadget? Are you taking this extended approach that when I produce, probably I have to pick the waste later on, or I have to produce gadgets that are long lasting, that can take quite some bit of time, longer than actually expected? So we need to think about extended producer responsibility. We need to think about eco-friendly designs. For instance, can we design devices that last longer, that are easier to repair, that can be recyclable? These are now provisions that we can have for manufacturers or for producers of these gadgets. But also, it is your responsibility as a producer to actually create awareness to people, create awareness to the consumer. How long is this gadget supposed to serve, and how can it be discarded? What are the components that you've used to make this gadget? Is this information readily available to the consumers? If they don't have it, then it is high time that the industry or the manufacturers start thinking about creating awareness, kind of building capacity of consumers to know what exactly you're using in these gadgets and how best they can be used. Where can we collect them when actually they are turning into waste? Can you run programs on safe disposal of this waste? Can you also put in mechanisms for recycling? All of these are provisions that the industry or the manufacturers can actually do. But also, can we build partnerships, like collaborating with recyclers? If the company is not able to recycle, you can have another private sector that is interested in recycling electronic waste. So, can you have a partnership? Maybe you produce a gadget, and then there is another private sector that will be collecting waste, and then you have a win-win situation on how best the electronic waste then can be managed. But also in terms of partnerships, can we have something like maybe away from recycling, maybe a take back scheme? After using for 5 years, can I take it back and maybe I pay little money, you give me another gadget? That win-win situation. So what we call the take back scheme. Can such a scheme be put in place to help in managing electronic waste? Similarly to the private sector, these guys can collect and process actually electronic waste. So maybe providing safer and efficient kind of recycling schemes. But also private sector can do a lot of innovation. They can change waste into something else, and that can be another way of handling these e-waste. But also we can think about private-public partnerships, expanding the safe e-waste management programs. Talking about the consumers, that our time is running out, but talking about consumers, we also have a very big, I know Henry expounded on consumers, but very critically is the responsible use. As consumers, how do we responsibly use the gadgets that we have procured or that we have gotten, to avoid dumping them unnecessarily, to be careful on which gadgets do we use, how do we select, how do we choose, using our right to choice. But which kind of gadgets are we choosing to use? Why do you choose a third hand or a second hand material when there is when there is a first hand or something like that? So responsible use of gadgets would be something very, very critical for consumers. But also consumers can put what we call the demand pressure, that consumers can start demanding for high level gadgets, gadgets that are safer, gadgets that are long lasting. So we can push companies actually to produce better gadgets. So why aren't we demanding for quality stuff? Why aren't we demanding for programs that cater for e-waste? It's our responsibility anyway as consumers. While we have a right to information, to safety, whatever, but we have a responsibility to demand for them. So if you don't demand, the industry may not do so much. So we can do the demand pressure from consumers, so that we are able to have, demand for repairable gadgets, to demand for trade in safer electronics, to demand for recycling projects or programs, etc. That can be our core as consumers. But also issues to do with behavior change. Why can't we shift away from the throwaway kind of culture, that when I buy a gadget, I must throw it away? We could reverse that, and we start having what we call maybe a culture of repair and reuse. So that kind of mindset shift from a throwaway to a repair and reuse kind of mentality, that also could help us as consumers to actually be proactive in this whole thing. Of course, the civil society and NGOs, you have to do a lot of advocacy, you have to do a lot of awareness, you have to do a lot of community engagement in relation to electronic waste. Now, in terms of academia and research institutions, you need to generate evidence that actually this e-waste can be a menace to our society. To what extent is the electronic waste, for instance, contributing to air pollution, to water pollution, to soil exhaustion, to disease, etc. And then can you do research on the cost of electronic waste? How much is it contributing to the economy in terms of managing electronic waste? That could be something interesting for the academia to undertake, but also, well, apart from generation of evidence, you need to come up with solutions in terms of innovations. How do we innovate then to move forward? In terms of technologies, how are you developing these technologies? But also in terms of training, how are you building capacity of engineers, electronic engineers, to come up with options on how best we can handle electronic waste, but also come up with technologies that can help us actually to recycle. What is the infrastructure? That can be research institutions and academia to come up with such things. And then international organizations are also critical. Development partners. We know that you're doing a lot of funding for so many other things, but can we have funding for recycling? Can we have funding for e-waste management? Can we have funding to support private sector to actually, make sense of the electronic waste and transfer it from a hazard and make it a better option for countries? So funding for research around e-waste, funding for coming up with better option technological materials, and then maybe kind of knowledge sharing across countries. This can be facilitated by the international NGOs. And then lastly is the media. Henry talked about it. I don't want them to really go there, but our agenda, we need to think about social behavior change when it comes to managing electronics and also electronic waste. But also one interesting thing that I implore the media would be around acting as watchdogs, the watchdog role. For instance, kind of exposing policy gaps around waste management, things to do with exposing illegal dumping of these electronics in our countries, things to do with unsafe practices that are happening in our countries when it comes to managing electronic waste. This can bring out this information and actually can be translated into something that is very productive. So having that watchdog kind of a characteristic will be something I think of importance to us. Now, in conclusion, I really want to say that electronic waste is both kind of a tickling time bomb, I would say, but also on the other hand, it can be a golden opportunity. So if each stakeholder can actually do their mandate, if each stakeholder can do their role, then we can turn this waste crisis into a circular economy revolution for all our countries. So I think with that, I really think that these are the ideas that we can leverage on, that we can build a case on, that we can use to move forward when it comes to the electronic waste management. So, with those so many remarks, I think, Henry, we have just a minute. I want to thank you guys for listening in, but also for giving us this opportunity to share with you about electronic waste. And we call upon each one of us to take keen interest in managing electronic waste, but also assuring that we are at the top of the agenda when it comes to discussion of issues that affect our health, our environment, our water, our air, our soils, and also our future generation. Thank you, Henry, and over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Like I always tell colleagues, you have greatly expounded on the issue and also grounding it further. And always, if it was a bowl of soup, you have even spiced it further to have the taste. Because being a teacher, you explain some issues far better than I do at times, and you ground them. But I would like to thank you very much because you have furthered the understanding of the e-waste and the different stakeholders' roles, and also appreciating that irrespective of us consumers having the rights, we have the responsibilities, and we need to ground them and play our roles. You see, green action, green economy, zero waste, all this stuff goes down to us, and even those as in businesses, net zero. You see, we need to go in and make sure that we do not affect with emission of gases, emission of affecting the planet. We take in all these things, but the major message to us, the consumers, all these processes, all of these aspects are done in our name. It is the consumer demand. It is the consumers who request for this. It is the consumer who, these are tailor-made for the consumer's needs. Consumers will have a responsibility to make sure that we responsibly consume. And as we are consuming, like Bernard put it, we need to inform the providers, the duty bearers, the businesses that we need responsible production and sustainable products. As we play a role in the green economy, circular economy, the digital economy in the digital era has to be sustainable. So all us, the stakeholders, we need to plan, to do, to check and act so that we have got a sustainable digital economy. And I liked where Bernard, you said, we don't need to access. Can we have enough for the purpose? In the digital economy, in the digital era, we don't need to be greedy, to have more than enough. Can we have that is enough for the purpose? Multiple gadgets, multiple products do not show us as we are sustainable. They only show us as irresponsible consumers. Can we have enough for the purpose? So having said all that, and like the processes are, we are in the digital era, which era needs us to be inclusive in the digital economy, but we should be in it as responsible consumers through responsible consumption, influencing responsible production, and influencing responsible policies that facilitate us in a healthy environment for current and future generations. So, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a pleasure being with you. And also, I would like to thank our producer, Dennis Bongole, wherever you are in the global world in Entebbe. I would like to thank you very much for always producing for us and guiding us. And also to thank your colleagues in the Humanist TV management and the Humanist Media Africa for always hosting us and providing us the platform to sensitize consumers using Uganda as a case. And I would pray those who listen, those who follow, please localize the content and share it in your respective countries, in your respective communities. Use your household as the starting point. Going back, think global, act locally, and acting locally should be your household, because you have got, if you go in and count now, you might have more than 10 electronic gadgets or appliances that are candidates of e-waste. So if you manage them well, that means your neighbors will see you manage it well, then your neighbor's neighbor You as a one person with a multiplier effect of 10, with your action and voice, we are going to take talking into action, into results for a sustainable digital economy, a sustainable digital era where EWest is handled well. Thank you very much, and we look forward to being with you. Thank you very much, Bernard. Thank you very much, Dennis Bongole, wherever you are, and I wish you a superb weekend. God bless.